Welcome to episode 29 of Rubbish Talk with myself, Alistair Meldrum.
And myself, Jane Bond.
And today we have an interview with Wendy Pring from the Way Forward 2045 group. So a little bit about Wendy later on, but first of all, as usual, a couple of bits of news from the sector.
And I've got one about, I think we were just looking at the circular economy waste route map 2030 consultation. So that's looking at what we're going to do from now on to 2030. It's not actually, to be honest, that long. So there's some key priorities, and there's a nice sort of route map strategic aim overview, which has got some nice pictures on it, and it's only 6 pages long. But the main thing there is 2025 introducing a charge for single-use disposable cups. Rural exemption for food waste recycling is going to be reviewed to see whether or not actually rural people can actually get food waste recycling now. From 2030, there's going to be statutory recycling and reuse local performance targets. So people, there will be targets there to work towards rather than it just being a bit woolly. Co-design measures to improve commercial waste service provisions. Not quite sure what we mean about co-design, but I'll have to read that in a bit more detail. The co-design thing is just slightly confusing. By 2025-26, develop and deliver a residual waste plan to 2045. So everything's been around recycling, really, hasn't it? Recycling, reuse and all that sort of stuff, but there's still going to be residual waste, so it's quite nice that they're actually thinking about that as well. And to set up new circular economy targets determined from 2025. So those are the main things, but there's loads more. I've got, just looking at something here, supporting sharing libraries and repair cafes, increasing the total to 100 by 2025. That's quite interesting. So there's a lot more in there than the ones I've just said, but yeah, have a look.
Yeah, no, there's certainly a lot. The most I've managed to do, I've had a skim through the document, and there is some quite good stuff in it. There's no denying it. It has taken about 2 years to get to this stage, so by the time it's finalised, 2030 will probably pass, and we'll not have made any progress. I think one of the frustrations I have with this is we don't appear to be looking at the big ticket items. We don't appear to be looking at the big tonnages. Coffee cups in terms of waste quantity in Scotland are probably 0.0001% of the waste arising in Scotland. There's bigger tonnages that we're not really doing much to address. So I do need to have a proper read through it, and obviously all the documentation that's been issued, because there's some quite chunky information provided, but it will take a bit of time to go through. So certainly there's good stuff in it. It's words. We need to be seeing actions. We've been talking about some of these things for quite a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what is that route map 100 or that the actual thing itself is 108 pages. It's like crikey, and then there's all these other things that go with it. So I don't know. I mean, obviously some people are going to be reading it, but I'm not quite sure whether I'll be reading it on my days off, Alistair.
Why not? Of course you will. As a serious waste professional, of course you will.
I'll just look at this strategic aim overview graphic. Yeah. 6 pages.
Summary.
Yeah. What's next? Oh, more consultations.
I'll leave that one for you. Another one. Yeah, so the next, the SEPA issued a consultation just before Christmas on the waste, the regulation side, the integrated authorisation framework, and they've now issued a second consultation which is related, and it's the consultation proposes a type of authorisations that SEPA is going to use under the new framework, how it will be applied by SEPA and the waste types that will apply to, and so on. Most activities seem to be likely to fall into the upper levels. They'll need a permit or a registration, and that consultation expires it needs returned by 12th of April. And the good news with that one is that's actually 192 pages, and the previous one ran to something like 300 pages. So between the 3 consultations that are relevant to the sector, people with nothing better to do in their life have got 600 pages of information to review and consult on. And you do sometimes wonder, the policymakers think we've got nothing better to do with their time than read policy. And I think I'm very much of the view, keen to respond to consultations, keen to get involved, keen to input. But sometimes if you feel you're not making any progress, or there's not any progress, it's all words, you sometimes actually wonder what the cynical view is. What's the point in responding to these things? Because we'll still be talking about it in 6 years' time, 10 years' time, and so on. So maybe a bit of a negative view, but there's 500 pages of consultations out at the moment needing done in the next few months if we're going to make a proper response to them.
Yeah, and given that we've been waiting a couple of years for it, to give us a month to respond, or perhaps a bit more than a few months to respond is, perhaps it's not quite as fair as it could be. And also, definitely going on from consultations, we've still got another one. Apparently, the 2024. We're going to get something on subsistence fees that will apply to the new authorisations and the standard conditions. So, watch the space for how much it's going to cost you.
Generally, any consultation I see in applications, subsistence fees is fairly short. This is what we're going to charge.
Yeah,
if you say no, you don't like it, they ignore it anyway. So I wouldn't worry too much about that consultation. That'll be ongoing. But
I'm going to plan for a short one on that one. Excellent.
Anyway, in the cases of all of them, I do need to set some time aside and read them properly. And I think that's the challenge everybody has, that they're so long. You only skim them. You don't pick up all the detail. Some people have obviously spent a lot of time and effort doing them, and it'd be good if we could get good feedback. And there will be people in the sector, people like Nikki Suter at RMS and Stephen at CISA, who will spend the time and put together a detailed consultation. But there's a lot of work involved with people that have got their day jobs to do as well. So it's on the to-do list for me anyway. Whether you're going to do it in your days off or not, Jane, that's up to you entirely.
Well, of course I'll read it. Part of the industry, I need to have my say as well. I can't have your say if you don't read it, to be fair.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on from that, the next thing, we had Simon Glenn at the start of the year, and he was talking lots about the emission trading scheme. And interestingly enough, and his view was the emission trading scheme is going to have a big impact on residual waste disposal contracts for councils. And Let's Recycle have got an article out at the moment that their latest waste disposal tender, they reckon that the emission trading scheme is going to add on £309 million to the deal. So you heard it here first from Simon. So if you've not listened to his podcast, if you've not read his blog that he kindly gave us to put up on the Rubbish Talk website, it's certainly worth a little bit of a read if you don't understand about the emission trading scheme, which, if I'm honest, myself and Jane never really knew much about until we sat down and listened to Simon.
Yeah, and it was a bit scary, wasn't it? The things that we'd missed and how much it could potentially cost. Yeah, can I go back to another fire with batteries? Another one. It looks like there's one down in Essex-based waste company, Clearaway. Again, large fire broke out at its facility in Pitsea near Basildon, down south somewhere, I guess. And again, looks like it's a battery causing that fire. And the picture that I've got here is lots of smoke and lots of flames. Yeah. But they do say the importance of a robust fire prevention plan. So presumably the whole site didn't go up too badly.
But it looks at the picture, it went up pretty badly.
Well, yeah.
But they did seem to get praise for their fire prevention. So they did, and they've identified as a lithium-ion battery that caused the fire. So there you go. Next thing, or last thing I've got is I got sent a little link from my son actually about the company shop group, which I'd never heard about. But similarly, the company shop group, what they do is they buy in or they get donated food items, or it can be clothing and other things as well, that are nearing the end of their shelf life, and then they resell these things. Now, to be eligible, you've got to be a member of the shop. So we're Scotland. There's a shop in West End of Glasgow, outside Glasgow, I think it's Renfrew. You can become a member. Eligible people are NHS, prison probation, fire service, police service, armed forces, support services. That's things like Border Force, Department for Work and Pension, Mountain Rescue, all these things. Registered charity or means tested benefit recipients if you're on mean tested benefits. And then the last one, which I wasn't sure, here's an acronym for you, Jane: Approved FMCG Logistics and Manufacturing Organisations.
Yes. Now, I thought the FM was something to do with facilities management or something. And then when we looked it up, it was fast moving consumer goods. So there we go, fast moving consumer goods. So presumably that's
anybody in the
food and stuff.
Yeah, anybody in the distribution chain. We think anyway. So the whole purpose of the shop is obviously they're selling food that's near the sell-by date, and they sell it at ridiculously cheap prices. And we'll share it. There's a little TikTok that somebody's done. Hopefully I'm allowed to share it. I don't see any reason why I can't share it. And we'll credit whoever did produce it. They did a wee video of their shopping basket and how much it was costing them, and it was a laden shopping trolley for, I can't remember, but hardly £10-15 for the whole trolley rather than your usual 90 or 100 quid or whatever. So quite an interesting concept what they're doing. It seemed to have a big coverage across the UK. So if you don't know about it and you're in these groups, then why don't you get on Google and have a wee look?
I did tell you, didn't I, about my Too Good To Go app?
I've heard about this before. Yeah. But my logic with Too Good To Go is you just end up buying crap that you don't need and then end up putting in your food waste bin because you don't eat it all.
Well, but you can get goods and stuff from Morrison's as well. It's a surprise bag. I've not gone for that one. It says groceries surprise bag. I haven't actually done that. I did the takeaway actually. I spent £4. I got a massive amount of takeaway stuff, which was enough for me and Lewis and some over. So that was a good value. That one was.
Was that part of your healthy eating campaign for?
Oh gosh, no, that's true. Okay. I'm trying. Healthy eating, definitely. We'll go into that further later with Wendy. Yeah. Albion News. What Albion News have we got? Well, the Dundee bin app that we've been working on. I think we've been telling you all about it perhaps not as we've been going through, but that is now live. So if you live in Dundee, get on that app and see what it's like. Any feedback, gratefully received. But if you want to know what bin to put out and what to put in your bin, go and download the Dundee bin app.
Yeah, no, it's going well. Downloads are good. Everyone's good. The feedback is good. There is one tiny little glitch with it at the moment. Or it's not a glitch. It's just a practical reality. So Dundee asked for a year's worth of data to go in the app, so you can see your bins forward for a year. But that means the apps work in a funny way in your phone. They only take up so much memory. They're only allowed to take up some memory. So what happens sometimes is the news items don't always load because there's so much memory going into the yearly calendar. So there's it's not a glitch, it's the app still works fine, but it's just a wee hiccup we need to work out what the answer is. But apart from that, it's all going well, and feedback's good.
Good. I should still keep lobbying East Renfrewshire Council then, shouldn't I? Because I didn't even get a calendar this time to put on me notice board. So I still have to keep going and looking outside and see what the neighbours are doing and hope for the best.
Well, when you sit at a meeting with call centre staff and they sit there and say as soon as we get inquiry now about bins and when they're due out, and you say to the customer, do you know we've got an app? And the customer absolutely loves it. So when you get call center staff telling you that, you know, you can tell you've won. You know,
you've made it.
You've done the right thing when, you know, they're selling the app for us, if you like. They're pushing the app out to the customers.
Excellent.
So,
the other thing we've got, we're still recruiting, looking for some good staff or senior consultant. You know, about 5 years experience in consultancy, waste management, contaminated land, that kind of thing. And we're also looking, we've been doing quite a bit of CIWM Whammy Tab assessors. We've got a lot of candidates through CIWM Whammy Tab. So if there's anybody out there who's an assessor for this, then, you know, and would like a bit of work going on, then give us a shout. It's all on the website anyway, and we can put a link in it.
Yep, no, absolutely. All the details on the website. If anybody is interested and wants a little chat, please get in touch. Quite happy to have an informal discussion before somebody sort of formally applies and so on. So if anybody's interested, and you never know, you might end up being an employee and end up having to co-host a podcast.
Yeah.
Have a rubbish.
Yeah.
Right, there you go. And then finally, before we move on to Wendy, we did with Simon Glenn's podcast. We had a few issues for some reason, and we have no clue why. The podcast pushed out a day early. We still don't know why, but it did. And then we had a few issues with the mail letter that goes with it as well. So if anybody's missing stuff or they're not sure they've got someone, just drop us a wee email and we'll get it sorted out. I think we're back on track. We just had a wee permissions issue with a few of the websites we were using. The websites weren't talking to each other, which took us a wee bit to find out what the problem was, but we eventually got it resolved. And lastly, Wendy Pring. I have known Wendy for lots of years. Somehow or other, when we started chatting with Wendy, we went down the rabbit hole of food and health. So the first 10 minutes, if you want to hear a health podcast, listen to the first 10 minutes. We're not experts in that subject, but we do talk about and I've talked before about the Zoe podcast. If you are interested in health and well-being, you know, some really interesting stuff. But we did chat. Wendy's an engineer by trade. We did talk waste. We talked anaerobic digestion. We talked Antarctica. She was recently in Antarctica. We talked about sidecar racing, sidecar racing.
Fascinating. I was telling the guys yesterday that I was doing training with about this sidecar racing. We're having a look on the website. Well, cool.
There you go. And we did have a discussion about coffee, disposable coffee cup dilemmas. And I think we all confessed that we didn't really know ourselves. And if we don't know, then how does the general public know? So nothing else for it really, apart from to pass over to Wendy Pring. Should be you.
Okay. Hi, Wendy. How are you? Nice to see you here.
I'm good. I've survived the storm as well, so feeling as though we've not lost too many garden items.
Yeah, that's good. I was hoping that the hailstones wouldn't keep going on the roof because they're really noisy. So yeah.
I think you might still have a bit of storm to come, Wendy. I think it's if air is anything to go by, you're a bit further in country.
Yeah, and I think I saw something else about Jocelyn or something about to sort of breezing sideways as well. So yeah, and I think that kind of ties in quite nicely to that whole climate change conversation. That, you know, it's these intense storms, intense weather changes, and how all that sort of all linked up to everything that you're doing in your day-to-day work as well.
Yeah, so I guess that brings us on. Wendy, who do you work? Can you just tell us a bit about who you currently work for and who, you know, and a bit about the organisation would be good.
Yep. So I am the founder and director of the Way Forward 2045, and I set it up just in lockdown. I'd exited my previous business as I'd wanted a greater focus on actually doing things that got me out of bed every day, let alone just a Monday morning. And I was focusing on development of an ecotourism resort. It's kind of where the main focus of it was. And through the early stages of sort of planning out that and creating a business plan for it, I secured some work with a couple of larger clients around supporting them in their circularity and how they can start to become more circular and a little bit more solution focused on what they do with their waste products, and in some instances with some of the raw products that they're using and how they can perhaps use to lower their carbon footprint. So they sort of asked me to come on board specifically with a very definite strategy. And beyond that, it was around how can we embed more climate awareness within our teams. And in the process of sort of doing all that, I think given the freedom and a large big blank canvas that I had, I was working with young people through the YPG scheme, and I wanted to maintain their employment.
Remember, you're not allowed to use acronyms here, Wendy. You've got to describe the acronym for us.
Okay, so the Young Person's Guarantee, basically East Ayrshire Council supported in providing a fully funded modern apprentice, and I took 2 on. And we started looking at, for our own development, the circularity of our food, the importance of food, and I'm sure you know that food waste has kind of always been at the centre of my background as an engineer. And we wanted to try and focus on how we could actually create a solution that was lowering carbon footprint but managing health and well-being at the same time. So that was kind of the ask. Fast forward sort of 12 months after employing them, we opened a retail arm in Cumnock, which has been trading 12 months now. So yeah, doing lots of things, all connected, but yeah, sort of varying degrees around waste, circular economy predominantly, and some sort of strategic carbon literacy work with individuals as well.
Wow, blimey, Wendy, you've been busy.
Yeah. Well,
the ecotourism.
Yeah, I'm self-funding a lot of the work, so it's kind of find a task, find a project, and then okay, how do I fund it? And by funding it, I needed to get people to pay me for things that I felt I could do quite well, and I believe they think I can do it quite well too. But yeah, that was the challenge.
It's interesting you were linking, Wendy, the food waste with health benefits as well. I was over the holidays, Christmas holidays, I was listening to a lot of podcasts, and they reckon that ultra processed foods cause more deaths than smoking now across the world. So basically any food, it's almost any food that's got a health claim or any food that's got ingredients you wouldn't find in your normal kitchen. And they estimate that's actually causing more deaths than smoking.
I absolutely believe that. I didn't see that at all, but I do believe it 100%. And I think it's a real challenge when we've got such a disconnect from the food, the sort of subsequent food waste part of that, and then our own health. And equally, all of those are all linked to, our ability of the soil to sequester carbon. So we're kind of mucking about with the planet's cycles quite significantly in lots of ways, but yeah, it's very challenging. And I think the biggest thing for me, it's all about the behaviour change around that, because how do you, even I find it really difficult, and I'm on a bit of a sort of program now to make sure that I can make the behaviour change, that I can make those difference, but it's still so much easier to just conveniently pick up things and move on for that quick buzz of whatever particular product it is that's driving you to take it.
Yeah, I was out with friends at the weekend and they were talking about the ultra processed foods and something to do with, I don't know whether it was the same thing you were watching, I was still listening to, about 35 plants or something you're supposed to have.
This is the Zoe podcast, Jane. Have you not listened to Zoe yet?
No, this is obviously
it's 30. So the aim is you should try, and so they're big on gut microbes and your microbiome in your gut. And they reckon to have a good microbiome in your gut, you should be aiming to eat 30 different plants a week.
Well,
And if you actually count it up, it's quite, I tried to do it the other day and I think I'm probably at 30, but it's pretty tough.
Well, I was thinking, well, I've got my blueberries and my bananas, and they said, no, you include like wheat and things like that because they're all plants.
You can include beans and
yes.
nuts and herbs and things like that, all count into it. So, you know, when you're doing it, it's interesting. They actually, I think as they get more data, what they're thinking is it's going to be more and more than 30 they need. But it's quite interesting how they've done it, because they've set up as a bit of a study, but they've also almost crowdfunded it, if you like. They've got people to sort of pay into it, so you pay a bit and then they do the data for you and they get harvesting all that data. So some of the stuff they're doing is quite fascinating.
That's new to me. What did you say that was? A Zoe podcast?
Zoe. If you Google Zoe, you'll find it. ZOE. And what they've got is a free podcast series that sort of highlights the work they're doing, but also gets scientists on to explain, you know, how things happen and so on. But you know, and they're pushing a lot of stuff at the moment about ultra processed foods being pretty horrendous for you, and they're not. Effectively, what they're saying is they're not actually food, you know, but they're high carb. They encourage you to eat more. There are calories in it, but there's no substance in them, and so on.
I'm slightly worried about me sausages and me crisps now that I've had this morning. I'm like, oh no, that's me.
My son has, and this is part of what they're doing, and again, it's interesting because, you know, we've chosen to set this up in Cumnock because that's obviously it's where we're based, but it was kind of it was very deliberate as well, which is, you know, if you can start to move into areas where potentially it's not necessarily practiced on a sort of huge level as yet, or, you know, just sort of feeding in slowly. And he started creating overnight oats, and that's kind of been my saviour since the beginning of January. So that's like, instead of me snacking on my crisps or sausage roll or whatever, you know, that whatever bar of chocolate happened to be nearest me when I was jumping on the train in the morning, and my overnight oats, and he's mixing them up. You know, we've got a dietitian reviewing them, and I don't really need to eat anything till 1 or 2 o'clock. So yeah, I'm finding that I'm starting to practice it a little bit better, a bit more conscious about it.
So what is your retail arm in Cumnock then, Wendy? What are you doing there?
So it's sort of it's a refillery. That's kind of what the young people wanted to do. So it's about creating accessible, organic, where possible, produce. So I told them, one of my day jobs, I work at the Hunter Centre for Entrepreneurship. So I did say to them, refilleries are a broken model. They're a bit of a middle class shopping solution. They're really not going to necessarily create the behaviour change that we need. So they went off and did a lot of tests around understanding the food waste from them, you know, all the stuff that would come back. And I said, well, we need to incorporate that into what we do. So we've got this sort of central area, which is food, and they'd priced all the sort of dry products, the sort of pastas and rices, the things that actually come in the refillery parts, and the herbs and spices cheaper, or certainly very competitive with every supermarket. And we decided that what we would do is we would do that because we would recycle all the glass jars. We would collect a lot of glass jars and we would recycle them and give them free of charge. Like, there'd be no charge for the customer. And if you want pretty ones, we've got some pretty ones, but we actively try to discourage customers from doing that unless they're giving something as a gift. So that was the main bit. And then obviously just looking around that, all the sustainability, and that was where they then started to look at the scope 3, look at the wider, you know, that supply chain, start to understand where the greenwashing was in any of the supply chain, so that we could make sure that we were building in good solutions. And then the building we got, thankfully, allowed us to set up a takeaway. So we've got a takeaway in one part of it, we've got the refillery in the other, and we've got a training suite in the other one where we do a lot of smaller activities for the local community. I deliver carbon literacy in there, but only for smaller groups. So yeah, that's kind of what we've got going on over there. at the
That
moment.
sounds brilliant.
Sounds good. Sounds good, Wendy. So tell me, I know a little bit of your background because I've worked with you. I've known you for, I'll not mention how many years, Wendy, because I might give your age away, but
We had less wrinkles. Not very many right enough. You're looking all right, but yeah, not as many wrinkles as we have now.
So what brought you into the world of waste management? What's your backstory?
Well, the backstory for that is so you know, if you go right back to the age of 8, I actually wanted to be a vet. But the thing is, you know, I'd wanted to be a vet for forever. So by the time I actually got to the point where you were choosing subjects, it was kind of just, I want to be a vet, and I sort of repeated it without any great belief in what I wanted to do. And my physics teacher had said, I didn't get the necessary grades, so my physics teacher had said, you need to redo these subjects. And I was like, I'm not redoing them. And he said, right, well, let's look at what you've got. And he gave me a prospectus for Strathclyde University. I was really good at physics and math, so I was a bit of a nerd when I was at school, and I did enjoy physics and math. So he said, you should look at engineering. So he gave me the Strathclyde Uni's book, and I picked environmental engineering. And his advice, now bearing in mind, as you said, this is a long time ago. So, and his comment then was, don't do environmental engineering, do civil engineering, and then you can specialise once you've got so far through. So
I would still agree with that, Wendy.
Okay, that's
still
quite good.
totally agree with that as a philosophy.
Yeah. So that's really encouraging to hear, because I kind of, when I repeat that to other, you know, particularly when you go to these sort of STEM days and things, I say, you know, it's go broad and then narrow once you're in. And I found myself naturally drawn during the whole degree to more environmental, to the dirty water, to wastewater. The Environmental Protection Act had just been sort of come out, you know, and kind of that dates me really, really, like, you know, properly dates me. And it felt like quite an exciting time, if I was honest with you. You know, it feels more exciting now, more frustrating. But you know, that was kind of where I went. And my final year dissertation was on commingling of landfill leachate with jam. I think it was I can't remember. I want to say his name was Howard. Was it Howard Robinson? Would that be
Howard Robinson? Yep, Howard Robinson.
So it was and I'd emailed him really randomly as a student, and he sent me through a whole load of papers. So I sat and worked up a few things around how we could look at co-mingling of liquid waste to create the sort of perfect brew, if you like, which is still, you know, different treatment processes now, but it's still the same process. The challenge we have in all our waste is that, you know, it doesn't come into the feedstock world as a perfect brew. You have to try and fix it and sort it. But that's kind of the backstory. And then I ended up working down. I worked in Scotland for a couple of years doing office-based environmental, and again, it was environmental impact assessment. So I was working with a consultancy doing them, and I found them really exciting. And then moved down south and worked on site for the vast majority of my career after that. And that was where I probably truly found, I don't know, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the variability of the role, and it kept me interested.
I mean, you say work on site, what type of sites?
Landfill sites, anaerobic digestion. So we were starting to build anaerobic digestion plants. There was a lot of, I'm going to shorten that to AD in a minute. So for anyone that's listening, anaerobic digestion will now be AD to stop me stuttering through it.
Stop me interrupting you.
Reed beds, you know, we did a fair bit of reed beds. You know, I'm still a huge fan of the sort of reed bed wetland, you know, that whole where it fits in the water treatment side of things. So my focus on waste, obviously at landfill, was great plans at the time. They were lining them, they were doing things properly, they were extracting, they were creating bioreactors in the ground, and there was a lot of excitement. But there was, I found it probably one of the most distressing roles as well, because you just saw the amount. At this point, we didn't have any recycling as such, so you just the trucks and trucks of stuff, just stuff, all sorts of stuff. Like, I think the day I saw about 4 lorries come in full of library books was the day that I thought, right, I really need to think a bit differently about what I want to do, because it just felt quite wrong. So yeah, that's the backstory. So fell into it a little bit, but not really. Yeah.
A total side question for you, just a wee nostalgia trip for me. Who was the guy at Halcrow that you sort of worked into when you left there? It was John?
John Dunbar. And
John Dunbar. He was a
yeah, like
good consultant.
When you talk about some of the state of our poor leaders right now, he was absolutely way ahead of his time with regards to just being a really strong leader, and someone who he gave me lots of opportunities to fail, basically, but in a really safe environment. He just gave me such big jobs and pushed me a lot. The first 3 years of my life, and then when I decided that I probably should go through the chartered engineer exams, he was very supportive then as well, with actually getting all the necessary paperwork pulled together.
Yeah. No, he was good. I remember John. Any favourite roles or projects through these years?
I think that I enjoyed, my previous company, when I set that up, I enjoyed when we started really working alongside some of the AD plant operators. There's an awful lot of dark art really that goes around and just sits around the design of these, and I remember at the time they were taking people who were in charge of landfill sites and then literally just saying, you're now the AD plant manager, and you're like, there's a whole different skill set here that's just very different to how you sort of mobilise the material, work with the feedstock. So I enjoyed that quite a bit, and I think it's because it was back into chemistry. Whilst chemistry is not my strongest subject by far, it really explains, chemistry and physics. I am a total geek. Chemistry and physics completely explains everything. It doesn't matter what your kids ask you, where you go, you're right, okay, let's just sit down and figure out where the whole chemistry and physics comes into the conversation. But I'm enjoying that. That was insightful. That was pushed my knowledge, made me probably go out across the whole UK at the time. That was actually enjoyable. The role I've got right now, thankfully, is one I'm really loving. But I've got complete autonomy of my whole life right now. I'm no other director, no other people round about me at the moment other than the team that I'm creating. We're still small enough that I've not got major operational issues, which sort of takes away from your day-to-day role. So yeah, I'm enjoying what I'm doing right now. I'm enjoying pushing boundaries and trying to build in a stronger climate awareness into what I'm doing, as opposed to just trying to sort of create a circular and support clients. It's like, okay, how do you embed carbon literacy? How do you embed climate and make it really clear that we do have one planet and we are actively turning it over quite badly right now. So
absolutely.
Type that there.
So I suppose that kind of leads on to the sort of current role and what you're trying to achieve in terms of the climate change and the circularity. So what kind of clients are you looking at? What sort of things are you doing? I mean, you've kind of said quite a number of things, but
so split into strands. The eco gamification is very much about developing a series of lodges or pods, call them what you want, just not ugly upside down new ones, but they're going to be completely, when you go and stay there, each one of them is going to have a specific theme around the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals. There's been a lot of focus on how we furnish them, how we put them together, what the immersive digital experience is within them. So a little bit of a taster. It's kind of around, it's like being on holiday in a mystery room. So it's sort of taking your mystery room experience and that whole customer experience around learning through play. It's kind of, with my children, they learn better when they're learning through play. As adults, we seem to forget that. So it's about how can I start to build together an environment where adults feel as though they're playing, but there's a more unconscious approach towards supporting them with more sustainable choices. So that's young millennials. That's absolutely already on board with sustainability, on board with all the digital use, the dashboards that we were planning to create.
So sorry, Wendy, you said this is gamification, did you?
I'd be using gamification, yes.
So what do you mean by that? Sorry, I'm being completely thick because
no,
I'm not a millennium.
We're creating a dashboard, so we're going to be using RFID tags and various other things that are beyond my digital knowledge. Okay, so this is how you measure and monitor different aspects of your water usage, whether you've gone foraging, whether if you're thinking about it with respect to the goals. This is about community wealth building, goal number 11. So it's not just about actually building in that we're going to have no plastic, because that's just one small element of that. It's about understanding your source of food, your food waste, all other types of factors with the energy you're using, switching things on and off, light pollution, how that'll impact on the way we design all the infrastructure that we're putting inside it. So we've sort of got a long list of written algorithms, if you like, which is, if this happens, then this won't happen. So we've got that bit, and that's kind of the thing at the moment that's getting me out of bed. The customers that I'm working with on my more business to business, which is I'm working with a hop company down in Kent. So I'm supporting them with some strategic direction around sustainability and basically their growth, which is more businessy rather than climate or carbon. But we're just starting the next set where we're going to be working with them for their climate. And I've worked for a mushroom company as well, and I've been doing that for 3 years, supporting them. Again, very similar. How to understand what your wastewater is. What is wastewater? A lot of people think that there's this fine line between it's grey water because it just runs on here, and actually you're then having those conversations about how you test the water, what it looks like, why it looks like that. So yeah, that's been very enjoyable, if I'm honest with you, working with them.
Do you think there's enough companies looking at the sustainability goals and
yes,
sort of match their operation? I know some of the bigger companies are, but do you think SMEs are?
I think it's that whole trickle down thing now. So my sort of day job at Strathclyde, one of the things I'm doing in the executive education is I'm helping to facilitate the Help to Grow programme, which they deliver there. So it's a little bit of a plug for that. It's an exceptionally well-funded programme. It's a post-COVID UK government funded programme. And so far I've probably been in contact. So I facilitate a cohort. There's 2 others of us as well. So there's 3 of us throughout the year facilitate different cohorts, but I deliver the leadership part and change management for every single company. I think we're now at 240 companies that have come through the university over the last 3 years. And whilst, there's a huge scale of those who really don't care, but there's an even bigger proportion now of people who understand that they need to embed some form of strategy within their organisation. And if nothing else, they're starting to understand it's not about climate as such. They're seeing that there is benefits to this circularity. They're seeing there's benefits to actually managing and minimising their waste. So they're actually much more focused on what they consider a waste. So I've noticed a lot of that. Does every company want to go down the route of doing more than just putting, crunching a few numbers in a spreadsheet and saying, oh, we're all right, we're net zero? Yes, but some of them are quite happy crunching numbers and just saying that it's net zero. But I would say definitely 60% plus is what I see as a number. So significant enough, I think. It gives me some hope that actually there is. They just don't know how to go about it sometimes.
So when you say Help to Grow programme, we're talking about leadership management, that kind of thing.
So it's like have you done an MBA, Alistair? I have a recollection.
No, never done one. I have thought about it before, but I've never been brave enough.
Neither have I. So, but after sort of listening to people who have, it's a 12-week mini version of something that doesn't dip in as deeply, and there's no specific output other than, it's one of these programs, what you put in is what you get out of it. So yeah,
and that's at the university. That's the University of Strathclyde.
Yeah,
I'm just looking on the website now, because when you said help to grow, and then before we were talking about retail and food, I'm thinking help to grow. Are we talking about growing crops or growing stuff? And I'm thinking, and then so that's why I went online to think, what, so I didn't look completely stupid when I said, what type of things are you growing?
No, very much growing your business as a responsible business. And Strathclyde are one of the very few that actually completely flipped it. It was an online program, it was developed as online, but we flipped it and it's all in person now as well, because we believe that I think we all agree that there's certain things when you're working in that peer-to-peer network, actually face-to-face still wins.
Yeah, well, we could put the link onto that as well. Onto the notes, can't we, Alistair? Because that looks quite interesting.
That's exactly what I was going to say. We can share if you've got a link, we can happy to share the link for you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cracky. Wendy, the more you talk, the more I'm thinking, do you actually have any more hours left in your day for eating and sitting down? But
it's probably really challenging for me right now, and the answer to that is really no, because when I do, I end up regretting it. But I'm reminding myself at the moment, I've got 2 startups effectively. I've got the retail arm, and to just add to the fact that I wanted to make that more complex, we do actively look for people who have neurodiversities as well, so different types of neurodiversities to employ them. I'm never going to be someone that employs 1,000 people, 200 people. I know I've got the skill sets to run a business up to the sort of size of maybe 50 people, that type of number. I feel comfortable with that type of size of room. So I felt that when we were doing what we were doing, that part of this whole climate just transition is actually to employ people that would not normally be employed. So you're bringing another income into the home. So it's kind of all tied up in that. So things just take a little bit longer. I'm leaving 16, 18 and 21-year-olds in charge of running a business and, busy off doing X, Y and Z in another direction. So I don't have a lot of time right now. 2024 is the year that's going to change though.
Okay, good for you. What about, have you had any real sort of disasters or anything that you think, oh my goodness, really that was quite funny in hindsight, but any sort of disasters in the waste industry or any worst jobs or anything like that you can share?
So I think I've got a lot. I'm not sure how well I should be able to share them, because I'm not in charge of those companies anymore and things. But I think for me, it's discovering as a civil engineer. So this is the bit that probably annoyed me the most. So you're going to clean out an AD plant, and you go, and the first thing you do, you've drained out, you know they're blocked. You can see enough to know that everything's, but you've not got any idea till you open them up, because they don't put anything in that's useful to actually have a wee proper look inside. So you kind of are in the dark a little bit. Well, you certainly used to be, bearing in mind we're 6 years on since I've done any of this. I opened the door and one AD, and you're sort of looking at it, you're like, wow. So there was like a solid mass of almost looked like straw, with the occasional great big bit of sugar beet just appearing at the edge of this door. And as you started to move the material away, you could see what looked like bars. And you're like, that's really strange. Why on earth would you put bars in the only access hatch? And it wasn't the bars, it was the heating coils around the tank that actually, whatever had been part of the process, the access hatch, the people access hatch that you're supposed to use to get in, to get to the base, had the other factor that there was heating coils just completely through the middle of the door. And the door was slightly lower than the base, which meant that anytime you opened the door, everything just came flooding out as well. So lots and lots. And as a civil engineer, these are the things that infuriate me the most, because you kind of know that people just take a standard design and they do that copy and paste thing, that no one's actually, woken up and looked at it. So that was a bit of a disaster, I suppose, for not for us, for the client, unfortunately, but not for me at the time. But yeah, not too many, thankfully. I seem to have escaped. Certainly, I can't think off the top of my head, but I may come back. Something you might have sort of dredged the depths of my mind now.
Do you know my biggest thing?
I was going to say, you must have had a disaster at a landfill. Everybody's got a disaster at a landfill site.
Well, yeah. Well, I've seen a couple of guys, and so when the smoking was first brought in, actually, there's a guy who worked on site. He worked for the same company as me, and he was told we were removing a pump from the well, and he decided in his infinite wisdom to get a lighter out because the pump got stuck. So he thought the best thing to do would just to be burn the rope. So he took his lighter, and the next thing you know, he had a very lovely set of eyebrows and not an awful lot of hair at the front of his head. So that was a bit of an incident, which for that client was challenging. But yeah, he just, I think we were all literally, as he started to do it, every single one of us were shouting no, and then the next thing. So I suppose just again, not rocket science not to do that.
I've got a very similar story to that, Wendy, that exactly the same sort of thing happened. And, in the days that guys smoked on site and, he bent down to do something with a cigarette in his mouth and ended up with no eyebrows and I don't think he had hair at the time, but
I mean, this guy was in his early 20s as well, so it was the no, I mean, there was supposed to be a no smoking policy on site anyway, but we had to sort of resort to some pretty. I also saw someone going down inside a well on the end of an excavator, so they had their harness on, and they were hooked up to the boom of a digger, and they got dropped down. That's how they got in. That's how they got. I kind of believed that was the case, so I ended up taking about a 3-mile hike round the perimeter of the site, because I knew if they saw me, they would stop the behaviour. And we were kind of at the point where we thought, we really need to catch you doing this so we can take the necessary steps to get you off site, which that was sometimes the worst bit of my job. I was always thrown in when I was on site as the person who was, looking to catch people out doing things the wrong way and then remove them off site. It wasn't a nice bit of the job, but necessary.
Well, hopefully the safety culture's changed a bit now. I think that, I think it has moved on compared with 20, 30 years ago where, the safety was pretty poor.
Yeah, pretty poor. I would like to think that, yes, definitely you would like to think that that's not even anything that anyone would even remotely think about now. But
is there anything about your role that sort of changed your opinions or your habits out with the workplace? And do you feel you need to sort of champion the environmental bit all the time, or can you have dinner with your pals without giving them a row for not doing stuff? That's what I'm really saying.
Okay, you need to ask my pals that. Now, they probably tell me to have a day off every so often. Yes, I will get that, have a day off. And I kind of think, well, yeah, maybe. Okay, but I think the thing that, well, you'll know this from before, I'm really passionate about gender equality. I'm really passionate about diversity in the workplace, regardless of what that diversity looks like, as long as everybody in the room doesn't look the same. It kind of doesn't matter what proportion it is. So that's definitely something that I think starts to bring more robust solutions, and I don't think you need to go very far to look at the answers that you get when you start bringing diversity into the room. Sometimes people don't want it because it actually creates a difficult situation first, rather than, well, that just makes it a whole load complicated because I just wanted to do this and now I need to consider something different. So outside the workplace, sorry, I think I might have just answered that question wrongly there. You can feel free to ask me again.
No, it was really about, if what you're doing in your day-to-day job, do you feel you've got to try and, tell your pals about it in your wider social circle?
So I wouldn't have done before as much as I do now. I probably do it more now. I'm sure you're aware I was in Antarctica just before Christmas, and part of that was through a global leadership programme around developing climate leadership. And it's just talking about it, you know. It's kind of, that's the thing that they said, and actually the audience that's the hardest audience to talk about, you know, all things to do with waste, dirty water, is actually your friends and family. It seems to be the one that's, because they'll shut you down, you know, they'll shut you down right away. So I try not to, or I try to at least minimize it, but the food waste thing annoys me, you know. I do get really annoyed about the food waste. So that's food waste, running taps, drippy taps, you know, things like that. These are all things that we've spent time doing, putting together, spending money, and then it's just going back around that cycle again. So those are things I do mump on about. So I'm probably a really rubbish dinner guest actually thinking about it, but yeah.
Well, two things. I'm going to sort of ask you a wee follow-up question, and then I'll come back to Antarctica because I want to know more about that. So I'm fascinated with that. But you've set up in Cumnock. Now, Cumnock's not the most salubrious area. You know, there's a lot of poverty and stuff in that area, former mining village and so on. And in terms of what you do you feel as if the public are engaging with you in Cumnock, or is it a percentage of the population that's engaging? How far do you think you've got in that journey?
I think so. We've received nothing but positive comments. And, you know, we get really, I'm not as, the first few months I was in there quite a lot, serving, understanding how to work a barista, you know, just all the stuff just to make sure I had some sort of idea of it. Found since probably about October, we still have people who are coming in now who didn't even know we were there. And they're starting to, so we're finding that people are coming in and asking us about different types of seeds, different types of berries, you know. Just, so do I think it's slow? Yes. And, you know, a sort of internal mantra we have is if we can make this work in Cumnock, we can make it work anywhere.
Absolutely.
So we're actually looking at a very different business model, and, you know, so we employ modern apprentices and I pay them the real living wage. That doesn't go down very well with lots of people as well, because they think there's no need, and I kind of think, well, try and live on £11.90 yourself. You know, we're not giving people the ability to actually make sustainable choices if we're not doing that, which means that we end up stuck in the same hamster wheel. I believe that the local community have really got behind us. I don't think we market ourselves as well as we could. You know, that's like any startup business. We're definitely not doing that as well. But the feedback in the shop, and the people who come in just to have a look and then bring their friends in. Are we changing perception? I don't know, because we try to figure out with the people that come in, are they already onboarded with the idea of sustainability and they're just grateful that there's a premises there? That's kind of the purpose of our takeaway. The purpose of the takeaway is to get people coming in so they don't feel as though they're coming in an eco shop. And we've very much designed it so it doesn't look like an eco shop, because we don't want to put people off with something that perhaps they don't want to engage with right now. So yeah, it's a hard market. Yes, definitely.
I totally agree. If you can make it happen in Cumnock, you can make it happen.
Yeah.
Any
really
place.
supportive and really helpful with the young people as well. And you know, so the way they're doing it now, you know, we're doing granola bowls, we've got chai seeds. One of our KPIs is how many kilograms of goji berries are we selling? You know, what does that look like? Because we're trying to figure out whether goji berries were a big seller before we set up, whereas we're now putting them in granola bowls. We've got them in our overnight oats. We're doing smoothies. And as I said, so there's lots of things that we're starting to do that you can see people really getting a measure of it, and you're making it accessible and showing them how to use it. So, you know.
See, I think this is what's important about environmental stuff. I think there's a huge part of the population is almost turned off about climate change, global, call it what you like. Whereas if you can tie it into, if you actually do this, you're healthier and you're better off. It's getting that sort of two-pronged approach to a lot of these things that you could go a long way. Anyway, Antarctica. Tell us more. How were you seasick for a start?
Yes, absolutely. Like one of the reasons I applied for this program was I've never been on a ship. You know, I've been to the island, I've been to Arran, you know, so I mean, it's a ferry. I don't know, it's not a ship, is it? You know, kind of very different things. So I've never been on a ship. And as well as obviously the whole climate leadership, I'm not necessarily a well-travelled person. You know, I never took a year out, and I kind of done fairly traditional holidays. So the fact that it was a global programme alongside, being on a ship. So it was a 12-month leadership programme with Homeward Bound, and then at the end of the 12 months, you then went on this sort of 3-4 week journey, an immersive leadership with another 109 women. So I'll leave that right there, and I'm not going to discuss that any further right now. Okay, all confined space. And I am definitely much more a natural introvert. So yeah, there was that's kind of what I was worried about: the ship, the fact that I wasn't going to see land, the fact that we were going to be in really deep water, the fact that my son kept finding all these sort of images and videos of the Drake's Passage and what it was going to look like, and just that whole fear. I suppose a fear of dying. Like, let's be honest, it was a fear of dying. It was the fact that I was going to die at sea, and that just terrifies me. So I was seasick. We went via the Falkland Islands. We were supposed to be going to South Georgia as well, but that was shut down because of avian flu. And I would say literally, we got on this ship, it was a captain. He was a Scottish captain. He grew up in Stevenson and then moved to Aberdeen. So that was a really a coincidence, is kind of what I saw it as. They all told us, you're going to get seasick, just accept it. You think you're going to die and you're not. And yes, I did think I was going to die. Truly, I think we got on the boat maybe 2-3 o'clock in the day, and then by 8-9 o'clock at night, we were in the last course of dinner. And I thought, I really don't feel very well. And it's the closest thing. And I'm going back years where I was perhaps in my misspent youth. It was kind of like the morning after a really, really heavy night, and your brain just was thumping and bouncing, but there was no, your whole stomach situation was all a bit iffy. And we went through the night, it was quite flat calm as well. There was nothing overly bad, after that first couple of days, it got worse. And I ended up sleeping outside for probably about 6 hours. I just took a blanket and a cushion, went and slept outside, because being outside was making me feel less ill. Every time I went inside, I felt worse, but yeah, really sick. As was probably half the ship. So, yeah.
Sounds really pleasant.
Yeah, really.
And did you get to land? Did you get to land on Antarctica?
Pretty much every day, yep. So we did the Falklands, then we headed over towards Elephant Island, and then we had to make some detours because there was a pretty intense storm. And on the way down, there was 8-meter swell, and the boats were sort of, the ship, sorry, not the boat. They kept telling us it was a ship, not a boat. But it just slapping off the waves, and then as it was slapping, it was sort of rocking from side to side as well. At this point, because I wasn't feeling seasick, I was just really worried. And I remember in my room, we were right at the front, because you had to share a room with someone else as well, an unknown person at that point. I do remember sitting in my room. That's why I reckon they tucked the duvets into the mattresses and everything. It's just like an envelope so you don't fall out your bed. I was convinced that's why they did it like that. But when we arrived down, we were in the Western Peninsula. So we were in between the South Shetland Islands and the Antarctic continent, right down, I think, to 58 degrees latitude, is as far south as we went. In and around the Gerlach Strait, and every day we had either 1 or 2 landings, or in some occasions where the conditions didn't allow it, we had a Zodiac cruise, so we just toured around. But we were on, each landing was between 2 and 3 hours. So yeah, it was phenomenal, really. It was just breathtakingly beautiful, and really strong message around what's happening there and how that will impact all of us.
That's what I was going to say. What was
sorry,
your
I'm just looking on the website, actually, for the Homeward Bound website, and it looks amazing. Did you jump in the sea? Did you do the polar plunge?
I did, yes. We did the polar plunge at Deception Island, which was a stop we stopped at, which is they call it an active volcano. It wasn't being active when we were there. And they said we might see warm bits. I can guarantee I saw no warm bits at all when we were there doing that polar plunge, none whatsoever. What was quite funny is there was about 82, I think it's the biggest polar plunge that's actually been recorded off one of the ships. There was 82 of us, not all at the same time, because that just wasn't logistically possible, because you're not allowed to put anything in the ground. There's quite, as I'm sure you're aware, really stringent biosecurity measures about what you wear, how you take it. You're not allowed to put anything down. So they had a tarpaulin So we were kind of all piled in a small area. But yeah, as we were in the middle of the polar plunge, a penguin decided to come and join us. And this, it'd been on the shore, and it literally was just sort of, it popped out the sea. And as it jumped out, you saw it going, oh, there's something going on here, sort of waddled over closer towards us. And then as we all started going in the sea, it just porpoised all the way over to us and started jumping round about. Which was really lovely. Yeah.
Amazing. I can see the picture of our new swimming cozies. I mean, I would, I'm quite into that, the wild swimming, but that's probably even a bit far for me with a swimming cozy in the Antarctic. But yeah, no, the pictures look great. I love the penguins.
Yeah.
We'll need to put a link. We'll need to put a link up for that one as well. What was your takeaway from that? What was your big takeaway from the journey, the visit?
I would say that probably the I'll be serious for a minute, because the takeaway, the takeaway thing for me is that climate change is not about the planet going boom. Climate change is about species loss.
Yes.
And that's really clear. It's about species loss. And it's not penguins, it's humans. And that was kind of the biggest takeaway for me, was that, you know, and whilst, you know, would I have known that before in a conversation, you would have figured that, you know, it's kind of not, but it was just really how do you message this? You know, the Adelie penguins are struggling because they cannot adapt to the changing environment. And I just very readily saw how, as humans, certain, whether it's Indigenous people, whether it's people in rural towns in Ayrshire, whether it's ex-coalfield sites, you know, whether it's people that are digitally excluded, this is the future of the planet we're going to live in is going to start being about what are the species, where are the species extinctions going to happen, and what parts of the planet are we going to be able to live in, but who can adapt to that the most? Who is going to be able to adapt to the changing environment and the way we eat, drink, etc., you know, get about. So that was the big serious message. The other part of it was very definitely we had an exceptional expedition crew, and we were in lectures every day. This was not, they told us it wasn't a holiday, and absolutely, you know, every day from very early morning till late at night, we were in classes, lectures, and we had just a fabulous crew. However, one of them in particular was the one that stuck with me with the knowledge. He's a polar glaciologist, and he's just received an MBE in this current honours. Exceptionally clever, but very good at just relaying quite complex scientific information in a way that you actually understand. And that in itself was just really phenomenal. And, you know, they have hope. They don't have, you know, they're not all doom and gloom about it, but there is a message around behaviour change. There's a message around, you know, the West Antarctic ice sheets are melting, and that's kind of going to happen, because you'll know more about this than I do, I'm sure, Alistair, but the whole greenhouse gas emission thing, that's from 100 years ago that we're experiencing. You know, it's still hanging around and we're adding to it. Yeah. Their main concern now is making sure that the East Antarctic ice sheets don't go through the same melt process, because that's where your 50-60 metres of sea level increase comes from. But yeah, we live in a beautiful planet, and it's just absolutely stunning. And that was kind of the thing, you know, the sort of personal element of it, just that mindfulness, being present for such a long time in such a beautiful place. You're just reminded how lucky we are. So that was my personal takeaway.
Yeah, that's good. And I take it the idea of doing that trip was for yourselves to become sort of ambassadors, if you like. Yes. Was that the whole objective?
Yeah. And having a supporting network, you know, so the vision and mission for Homeward Bound are pretty clear, and they openly are trying to create a network of women in STEM with 2 M's for medicine, to communicate better, to network better, to provide information, you know, to be better at communicating science. And they feel that as that starts to grow, then we find ourselves where we can support better gender balance and support the guys who are already doing it in a more robust way. Because there was 28 countries represented on the ship, so there was a fair, you know, a good representation across different cultures as well.
Sounds fascinating. Sounds fascinating. Anyway, going back to we've gone off topic in terms of our question list here. It's nipping back to how do you, Jane touched on this earlier on, how do you get away, relax and get away from work, or do you?
I like, at the moment, not very much. I've still got a 12-year-old, so she does take up quite a lot of my headspace, if you like, in a positive way.
Almost a teenager.
Oh no, she's sort of she's definitely in that zone right now. Yeah, I've noticed that. She started secondary school. Definitely noticed that. Just, you know, I don't have any specific hobbies anymore. I'm probably getting I'm getting into trouble with my kids because I don't, because they seem to think that I should be doing something to keep me busy as a hobby. I haven't found anything yet, you know. I haven't quite found something that is a hobby that would take me out. But
Jane will take you wild swimming.
Yeah, but you see, the whole wild swimming thing I do enjoy, and I found it was really, really helpful. I've got some aches and pains now, you know. I guess probably years of racing sidecars and all the other things I've done as well without giving. But yeah, being outside is still fundamentally my favourite thing. Is just being outside anywhere. Not you know, I enjoy cities for a visit, but I mean outside in nature, up a hill, in a field. You know, that's kind of the places where I recuperate, whether it's a walk. I don't really do any jogging. I like cycling. I'm still not so good at it as I would want it to be. That was kind of my latest one, and then my bike broke and I've never replaced it. So being outside.
Cycling and outdoor swimming is my thing, although I do need to get myself into gear, literally, because I really haven't done very much since Christmas. Do you know, you said something there, racing sidecars? What was that? That's
I know. I never asked because I know
say something, I'm like, what's that?
I know the story here, so you that's why I never asked.
Yeah, no, it was something that I did for probably 5 or 6 years with my ex-husband. You know, he was the driver of the sidecar, and I was the sack of potatoes in the back.
These things are nuts. You've got to hang your arse off the back of the bike and stuff, don't you? Basically.
So you're sitting in a sidecar, like
not a grommet style of sidecar, like, you know, like a TT. Like, you think of the TT, the sort of sidecars that look like that. Right. So there's a little tiny platform at the back of it. My older daughter, she does it now. She's a passenger, and she did exceptionally well the last couple of years. I have to say, when she started doing it, I was horrified, and then I thought, well, I can't really say anything, you know. I kind of made this really easy for you. So yeah, she does it. She enjoys it. I watch occasionally, but I try not to. Well, I mean, watch her, but yeah.
I'm going to have to Google this as well now. Every time you say something else, I'm Googling something else. It's like, what's that then?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Make sure that, you know, and so you know, it was weekends. You know, we raced at Knockhill, East Fortune. My first ever race was at Brands Hatch. So I like watching race cars, and that I'm excited about where racing engines go with hydrogen and things, because I kind of think that's the route they're going to have to go down. You're not going to get any fast electric ones going around tracks, are you? So. Yeah.
Well, I met somebody. You were there, I think, Jane, at the Vibes Awards a couple of years ago, and they were racing electric cars, and they'd come from sort of petrol cars, and they were saying the electrics were far superior for a race. You know, as long as they could get that battery charged up, they were far superior in terms of speed and stuff off the line and all this sort of stuff.
It's good to, I mean, I was only ever racing at club level, and there was a definite, you know, they're petrol heads. They like the smell of the petrol as well as the, you know, it's not just the going fast. There's a whole behaviour change around there as well, that, you know, and I have to say, I smell them when I go in it, and I do have that moment of, you're like, no.
Well, I'm on Googling now, and I'm looking at it thinking, oh my goodness. I was saying here.
You're meant to do your research before you talk to the guest.
Oh, I didn't know Wendy did sidecar racing. Hit speeds of 260 kilometres per hour.
Yeah. I never went that fast. Okay, these are going to be your world champions and things. You know, still fast when your backside is like 4 inches off the tarmac. 80 miles an hour, 80 to 100 miles an hour was kind of our top speeds.
We need a photo. Have you got a photo, Wendy?
I will have a photo of my backside.
We need a photo. We need a photo to go out with you.
A photo of Wendy's backside is sticking out. Yeah, very. God, blimey. I'm writing all these down, thinking, wow, that's so cool. So, what is next for you in your career? You said something about 2024. You might have a little bit more time. What's your sort of plans for 2024, 2025?
Oh, world domination, you know, all of that stuff.
Okay, well, it goes without saying.
Yeah, I want to. This year is about consolidating all the things that we're doing. That's what this year is about. It's about consolidating. It's about putting things together. I've actually just a recent recruitment to the company. She's only working part-time at the moment, as somebody that used to work for me before, so she knows the workings of my brain, she knows how I think, and she actually manages to think better than me sometimes. So that's quite exciting, because that will help me to get that sort of consolidation. I've sort of done a bit of a soft launch of my carbon literacy programme, so that's something that's going to be probably featuring quite highly this year. And looking at how we can take the whole business model of our shop, our retail arm, and use that to support the business model for the eco gamification. It's just flipping things around a little bit. It's about putting well, we all know this. For me, it's about putting sustainability right at the heart. I'm in a very fortunate position. I'm not having to retrofit sustainable practices to what I'm doing. I like working with teams of people. So yeah, consolidating everything, and then hopefully by 2025 realising funding for the first eco gamification site, and actually starting to, you know, break ground would be amazing. In fact, the fact I'm saying that out loud with you guys right now is like, you know, that kind of just sets it down now.
It's going out live now.
do it now. I can't not think about it. So more of the same. I'd like to go back to Antarctica. This is something that people should look at if they're really remotely interested, is that British Antarctic Survey have got a shop out there at Port Lockroy. And we obviously got to do the tour to the museum and things there, but every year they look for seasonal workers. And you don't need to have any particular skill set as such. You know, you obviously need to be able to, they recruit the 4 or 5 people they do to create a good, robust team, rather than because somebody's got a good set. You know, obviously you're 5 months on a tiny island surrounded by, I don't know, I want to say a couple of thousand Gen 2 penguins, and nothing else. You don't even get left a boat. You're kind of sort of stranded, and yeah, I quite fancy that. I did fancy that. I spoke to the kids about it and said, you know, I'd quite like to do this, or at least throw my hat in the ring for it. So I don't know. Beyond this year, I'm kind of, ask me again in 6 months when I've achieved the first few targets I've got to get through.
Right, I'm just writing down that application for shop assistant in Antarctica. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. The next one, I've got one fact you want to share from your job or sector which you think people might not know. I've kind of got quite a few that I've written down here, but is there any that you have particular fact that you want people to know?
I wrote this one down because I didn't want to get distracted by something that was completely you know, just some unnecessary. It's the debunking of myths around carbon footprints. And the carbon footprint of a mushroom is significantly greater than the carbon footprint of a good organic glass of milk. These are things, now that is changing, but it's kind of, when people talk about things being good or bad, that's kind of what we're trying to showcase in the shop, is that, you know, we've got Moscow milk here. So we've got someone who's doing all the low carbon infrastructure, as well as practicing regenerative agriculture, which short cycles the methane, etc., from the greenhouse gases. So, and yeah, I could talk about that all day, but I'm going to stop right now, because it's, you know, it's changing. You know, it is changing, but it's I like people to think about carbon footprint as a consequence of not the product, but the process and the people involved in it. Because everything we do, we can do better if the right people are doing it and the right mindset. So that's kind of my one bit of people might not know.
I like that example. I like that. That's a good example. I think you've got similar. The carbon side has got exactly the same issue as what we talk all the time about the waste management. There is such a lack of knowledge about waste management. The number of people who say, where can I recycle my Mars bar wrapper or my crisp bag? At the end of the day, it's a tiny tonnage out of the whole scheme of things, and it probably matters not a jot what you do with it. But everybody's desperate to do what they feel is the right thing and don't actually understand the bigger picture.
I think that's the thing that bugs me the most. So the thing whatever you just said there, sorry, I've sort of dropped that off my short-term memory. One of the things, when we set the takeaway up, the takeaway in the shop was absolutely, I've got this whole thing around what I want to do about food waste knowledge and great big goals, but I was very aware that doing a takeaway, we were just effectively starting to move into that, what's the single-use stuff we're creating? How are we creating this? And we're not Starbucks or any other big thing that can have, all your fancy reusable cups and et cetera, et cetera. So there was a lot of challenge around that. So we use, are we allowed to say which companies we use? I'm not sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we did a lot of research and we use a company called Biopack. And we use Biopack because there's some really strong credentials around products, where the products come from. And we use a product called PLA, polylactic acid, and it looks like plastic. It fundamentally looks like plastic, but it's made of cornstarch. So again, we looked into the company, we looked into the directors, we looked where they source their cornstarch and things. This material, when you're finished with it, should go into your food waste bin. It's part of that circular cycle of being something that can only be industrial composting. Let's put my teeth in. Industrial composting, so either in vessel or AD. I also know from my previous life that AD plants don't really want lots of that coming in, because if they've not got the correct shredding equipment at the front end, etc., 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 it creates them a whole load of challenges. However, as a recyclable solution, it's a very good solution. So that's kind of what when you were saying about, understanding the bigger picture. So we told our customers, because obviously they just saw us, well, you reckon you're doing low carbon sustainability, yet you're using single-use plastic. So we're like, no, we're using PLA. This is where it's sourced from. This is how it's sourced. And we did a little bit of an education thing around it. We've been unable to get any direct instruction. So now, and we got Biopack down in London. They've got a really robust service. They actually, a bit like your cardboard boxes you can get put in your office that, they come and collect your paper, etc. They do a very similar thing down in London, because obviously that's part of the service they can offer in a large populated area like that. Up here, we don't have that. So we have just been saying to our customers now it's industrial composting. All the waste in East Ayrshire goes to anaerobic digestion plants. I know I'm not the only person. I know there's a few other locals around here, different takeaways, etc., sort of cafes where they offer that takeaway solution. Also use them completely separately, but we've come together a little bit collectively to say we need to do something about this, because the challenge is that if we don't make that message really clear, we're going to end up contaminating the plastic recycling, or people are just going to shove it in the general landfill, because there's that confusion of, where do I put this, and does it really matter? And you're like, it does matter. But for me, the biggest message is every time we start to create a new set of legislation, a new set of rules around where our waste goes, we need to be very mindful of where the products are coming from. And I don't think we've quite got that right in the waste industry yet. I don't think we've got the conversation between the producers of the cups and the takeaway cardboard, and the fact that why the hell can we not have some waste residue on it, really? So yeah, interesting interesting world. I don't make those rules, thankfully. I just try to make sure that I make it work as best as possible.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Wendy. It's a constant challenge. There's a local cafe here that sells stuff, and I'm sure it's the type of material you're talking about, but it's totally unmarked.
Yeah.
So I look at it and think, where does that go? Which bin do I put that in? Because I have no clue where it should go. And they do actually stick a nice shiny plastic label on the top of it, their company name. So, which in fairness comes off relatively easily. Yeah. So
it's the thing. So it's that double whammy, because we've got to put the label on it for nutritional qualities for our overnight oats and things now. So, and we've gone to probably about 2, 3, maybe 2 definitely label suppliers to try and find the label that comes off the easiest. And then I sit back and go, how many people are going to take the label off it? This is the education. It's like, and it is important. I find it important because, one, I'm very aware that there's a whole load of waste that I'm producing now as a business that I wasn't producing 12 months ago. And I want to make sure we're doing it right, and et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, it's, I don't know the answer.
What's quite interesting here, Wendy, is your experience. You've worked in the waste sector for well in excess of 20 years, and you're sitting there saying you don't really know the answer. I didn't say 31 or whatever it is, Wendy. I said over 20.
We'll work with 20. Yeah. I don't know the answer. I mean, this is.
That's quite scary, though, isn't it?
It comes down to politics. It comes down to whatever private waste solution is in an area. It comes down to the collection team. It comes down to being able to get the message to every single householder. And I think anaerobic digestion plants are the route for lots of things. I'm a huge fan of those we've built them. That's a lot of infrastructure that we've created. Yeah. I think there's a way in which we need to look at how we commingle our feedstock, and that's all I understand about it. Is that PLA, if you've got a great shredder, which might cost you an extra £500,000, if you've got a good shredder at the front end of your system, you could probably get away with lots of things. It's the shredder is what I believe to be part of the challenge with the use of it. Yeah.
Okay, just moving on. Last few questions. We've changed this question for 2024. So previously we used to ask for an acronym. We've changed it to your favourite bit of slang or local dialect or expression, either from the waste sector or from your general life. And I'm sure you've got plenty, but whether it'll include swear words or not, Wendy, I'm not sure.
So, I mean, I probably would have said PLA, but I've already done that to death in the last couple of minutes. I think, I just struggle with acronyms anyway. And being at university, they have an acronym for everything. And you literally, it's like looking at Swahili or something in a paragraph. It's full of it. So let me think. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do this justice right now, because I did write down PLA for that, but I jumped away ahead of myself. I think just generally the fact that we do use them, and we actually then immediately close off an audience. So rather than giving you the bit of jargon that is there, it's that I would use or would annoy me, is the fact that we actually just shut off conversations. We disengage people from learning, because the minute you use an acronym, right away everybody feels excluded from the conversation if you're not part of it. So that's all I can add right now. But I'll say something if I can think over the next sort of couple of minutes, but I can't think of it.
We can add it on. That's fine.
I'll tell you what, I have so many, because when I came up from England and worked in Glasgow, I was like, oh my goodness, this is a totally different language. And then, when the kids would come back with their sort of local dialect, the sort of some of the language from the nurseries and everything, I'm thinking, I have no idea what you're talking about. So, yeah.
I'm not a fan. Yeah, I'm not a fan of acronyms, but
anyway, so we're going to give you a magic wand. What one thing in the big bad world of, well, either waste management or the world you live in would you like to use it for?
Food waste. Food waste. Or the ability of food waste to be commingled with so many things, to have local solutions for these, we create solutions for food waste, and then we go figure about how we're going to fill them full of waste. And it's like you need to get the customer first. It infuriates me that something as wonderful as food waste in all its forms, both as it's about to go in through the plant and when it comes out the other side, we've still not solved that digestate problem. We've still not solved all the things, and we worry about microplastics in our soils. I get it. I get that there's a conversation that's got to go around that and recognition. I think I read an article last week that they're now getting nanoparticles in people's bloods. There's different battles to pick. And I think the fact that we have got a nutrient-rich digestate, that actually, how do we enable that? How do we stop the policy and the regulation? There's a protection to human health. I get it. There's much bigger conversations at play in the world right now, and I think sometimes a dose of pragmatism is what's actually required in order to find sort of better joined up solutions. Collaborate across the waste providers, the local authorities. Scotland's a small country. We should be getting this right all the time, every time.
That'd be good. That should be 2024 mission.
Yeah, sprinkling of grain dust over all our food waste, just the life cycle of food waste. It's responsible for 30-35% of greenhouse gas emissions. There's a really, really quick way to cost of living crisis. How do we manage our food waste? There was a chap on one of the radio stations, I'm sure it was Radio 2 yesterday, who does £5 meals. Yeah. There's lots of ways don't get me wrong, he wasn't necessarily looking at the healthy options for some of them, and he did freely admit that, but there's lots of ways in which we can start to better connect with our food, mental well-being, our physical health on top of that, and then use the output of any food waste we do produce to actually start making a healthier soil again. So I kind of think that for me is the cycle that I would love to sprinkle some fairy dust on and make it work better.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. I think if we could do it, sprinkle fairy dust on it and then just make it disappear, that would be ideal, wouldn't it? So finally, what advice would you give the young, you're working a lot by the sounds of things with MA and the MAs and the younger generation. What advice would you give them to get into this industry or follow in your footsteps, or what would you tell them to do?
So I do focus, as I'm sure you probably imagine, on our recycling in the store, and it's really funny. They don't want to touch waste bins at all. They just don't want to touch it. So we're on the sort of theme of gamification, if you like. Some of the things internal, I haven't got an answer for what I'm doing for them yet, but I can tell what I've discussed with them, and we did this at the start of January, is that I want a team metric for them all to work together. So, it's kind of about how do it was done through so we did our performance reviews when we came back in the beginning of January, and we were talking about the things we wanted to change. And these are all about individual targets and objectives. And I went, okay, I've got a group one, I've got a full company one. And so I've done the toolbox talks around all the different types of waste we collect, we segregate, what we do with the glass jars, etc. And as we start to process the waste, there's going to be prizes and cabbages, is probably the simple way to put it, for how many hours I have to spend sorting out their recycling with my gloves on. So it's a bit like your waste audit. It's very like your waste audit, actually. In fact, I need to pick your brain on it a little bit, what I could give it a sort of punishment stroke rewards. But it's kind of, I don't want to necessarily do that. We all need carrot and stick. We always need carrot and stick. The carrots just need to be big enough to make sure, it's not make the stick big enough so they stop doing it. So that's the conversations I've had with them is, you've produced this waste, you've created it, What's your solution for dealing with it? And that's kind of the message I'm saying to them, because we're trying to work on the basis that, you know, we're bringing in jars, we're cleaning them, we're washing them, they're doing all these great things. They love the glass jar bit of it. They love that. They're really happy doing that, setting it all out, doing everything for the customers. But when it comes to our own internal waste and recycling of it, you know, they put paper towels in the paper bin because they're paper towels and they're paper. So that's kind of, we're working on them not being frightened for any type of recycling or sorting of our waste products, and actually to sit down and we're going to start measuring them and weighing them. That's kind of the message I've said to them, because if we can get this right as well, then we're on a really good position at that point. It's a valuable skill.
We can give them some work experience of waste analysis if you want, Wendy.
Yeah. So they've already got 7 hours of volunteering per month that we put in. And we usually say a charity or, you know, sort of a good local cause. So we build that into that's more about, you know, making sure they take part. So I'm absolutely up for giving you some volunteers. I'm sure that would be quite an interesting conversation.
Yes, no, that'd be good. That'd be good. Okay, I think that's us exhausted our questions. So we had a fascinating journey through carbon, climate change, Antarctica, sidecars. Oh, we started off with health and well-being, didn't we?
Yeah, and Zoe and her podcast and all those.
Whether we're qualified to talk about that or not is a totally different question. But
we've all got an opinion of these things, yeah, definitely.
Thank you very much for your time, and good luck with 2024.
Yeah. Thank you. Really interesting. Thanks, Wendy.
Yeah. No, thank you both. I've really enjoyed it. It's been fun.